So what exactly is swing weight? Like, how do we measure it? How do we change it? What are the variables involved in changing it? And then when we do change it, what does that affect? What differences are we going to see in the results? Different club speed, ball speed, launch, spin, miss, strike, consistency, feel. Like, what does it change? Well, today, that's what we're going to find out. So welcome back to Elite Performance Golf Studios, and today is a topic that I get asked about all the time. Swing weight. Like, what is it? How does it work? What does it do? What does it affect? And that is exactly what we're going to cover in depth today. So I'm going to be coming at it from a lot of different angles. I'm going to be doing a lot of testing on quad. We're going to be testing multiple swing weights at multiple different actual weights. So as we'll talk about as we go through the video, overall weight and swing weight isn't necessarily linked. You can have a really heavy club at a very light swing weight. You could have a light overall club at a very heavy swing weight. They're not necessarily linked in that way, but we're going to have a huge variety of swing weights and overall weights within this video using the same club, just changing the head weight and the weight at the grip end to manipulate the swing weight and the overall weight. So it's going to be a really, really interesting video. I'm sure it's going to be very educational. The results I can't wait to see already. I think it's going to be a really good video. Okay, so first up, I'm just going to touch briefly on what exactly swing weight is and how it's measured, because I'm sure most of you probably already know this. It's fairly basic, really. I mean, this swing weight scale, like I've got in front of me, it's essentially telling me the balance point of the club. Obviously, it's measured over a 14-inch fulcrum. We've got this sliding weight that moves up and down, and all we want to try and do is get it to balance out, right? So I think this is about D1, so if I move that to about D1, we're going to start to see it start to balance out. It's very slightly off. I mean, it's an old school Golfsmith swing weight machine, analog. Obviously, you can get digital ones nowadays, but I just love how accurate this thing is. I mean, you can even see it just bobbling, so it's like it's very close. You can just move it a fraction and it kind of changes. So we're looking at kind of, I mean, it's a bit hard from this angle, but just under D1, essentially, with this setup. Now, this is telling me the balance of the club. Like I said in the intro, it's not necessarily linked to overall mass. People would think a heavier swing weight is a heavier club, and that's not always necessarily true. So again, if I've got 20 gram weight in my hand, which is how I'm going to be manipulating the swing weight using switch grips, so I can put this in the butt end of the club. So if I was to pop this up here, essentially, I've now just added 20 grams to this club as a whole. But as we can see now, I need to now move this down the scale, closer towards D5, I think this would be, something around there. You can now start to see it come up. Can't really see what I'm doing from this angle, but there you go, you see it come up. So it's just reduced the swing weight a lot because I've added 20 grams at the handle end, dragging the balance point up the club. If I was obviously to add mass to the head end without adding mass to the grip end, it's going to increase the swing weight. It's going to tip the scales this way, and I'm going to have to nudge that weight back up, meaning the swing weight is heavier. So that as a base level, a swing weight is just where the balance point of the club is. If the head's really light, it's going to be a very light swing weight. If the head's really heavy, it's going to be a very heavy swing weight. It's probably the easiest way to kind of think about it, but obviously where we're going to add the mass is going to shift that swing weight and that balance point around quite significantly. Right, okay, so now we've touched on kind of just what swing weight is briefly and how we measure it. Let's talk about how we manipulate it. There's going to be 4 main areas that we're going to use, or you can use, to change swing weight. First and most obvious one, obviously, just being head weight. So this being a Cobra LTD XLS, we've got the 2 head weights, right? So we could just change them for lighter weights or change them for heavier weights. We're going to put lighter weights in, it's going to reduce swing weight. We add heavier weights in, it's going to increase the swing weight, right? Pretty basic. And at the head end, it's about 2 grams-ish. So if we add 2 grams, it's going to equate to 1 swing weight heavier. If we take 2 grams away, it's going to reduce it by about 1 swing weight. So we've got head weight, we've got grip weight, which obviously is going to be a big one for a lot of you, where you're changing grip size, kind of going mid-size or in jumbo, you know, with cords and stuff like that, putting heavier grips on. So that is obviously going to drag the balance point up the handle and reduce the swing weight. Now with grips, it's about 4.5 grams is about a swing weight. So if we were to up the kind of weight of this grip by about 4.5 grams, it's going to reduce the swing weight by 1. Okay, the same thing if we were to take that mass away from here, it's going to increase the swing weight by about 1. The next one would be shaft weight. So if we increase the shaft weight by about 9 grams overall, it's going to increase the swing weight by about a point. Now there are obviously variables in that because different shafts have different balance points, so that's a rough guide, but if you're making the shaft heavier, that is going to increase the swing weight as well. And then the last one being length. Obviously, the longer we make something, the heavier that weight is going to feel on the end of it. The shorter we make it, well, it's not going to feel very heavy at all now, right? So the longer we make the club, the heavier it becomes. It's about 1/2 inch is about 3 swing weights. Again, roughly in that area. So if we're going to add 1/2 inch, it's going to roughly add 3 swing weights. And if we cut it down 1/2 inch, it's going to take roughly 3 swing weights off. And that's obviously a very big one for you guys to understand because there's a lot of people that just like messing around and cutting things short and adding loads of length and whacking loads of big grips on and all that kind of stuff. So that is how we would manipulate swing weight. And we'll touch on that more as we go through because we're about to test a lot of different weights and swing weights. Right, so before we dive into hitting, I'm just going to quickly tell you what I'm going to be testing. So the setup is always going to be kept the same in terms of head, shaft, grip. We use switch grips, which is what's enabling me to change the mass in the grip. There's loads of different weights I've got that screw into the bottom of the grip, so that's great for that. But the head shaft grips are going to remain the same. Cobra LTD XLS 9-degree head. I'm obviously going to be changing the weights as we go through to change the swing weights. Venice Blue TR6X, that's going to remain the same. And it's just a standard size switch grip. And obviously we'll be putting heavier weights in the butt end to change the swing weight. So the combinations that we're going to be trying, standard, first of all, standard grip, standard head weight. And this is D1, it's about D0.9 actually, but we're going to call it D1 for ease. So from heaviest to lightest, we're going to have a 340 gram overall club. And I'll let you know the setups as we're going through and hitting them. We're going to have a 340 gram overall club at D0. So it's actually going to be a very similar swing weight to this, slightly lighter swing weight, but much heavier overall mass. Just to let you know what this is now as a stock configuration, this is 313 grams weight at just under D1. So we've got a 340 gram, so much heavier, but at D0, so much heavier club, but slightly lighter swing weight. And we've got 333 gram at C5. So again, still much heavier overall mass than this, but a much lighter swing weight. And we've got a 326 gram at C0.5. So again, heavier overall mass than this, but nearly basically 10 swing weights lighter. So it's just madness, probably a bit extreme, but I'm going to throw that in. 320 grams at D5.5. So that's the heaviest swing weight in this test. So again, heavier than this. And D5.5, so the heaviest swing weight. Then we've got this at 313 grams at D1. And then we've got 306 gram at C6. Now why I've got that in there, it's very similar from a swing weight perspective as the 333 gram one. So we've got a 306 gram at C6 and then a 333 gram at C5. So a very similar swing weight, but a really different overall mass. And I just want to leave that in just because it's going to be very interesting to see what the results are with a similar swing weight, but a completely different club weight. It's going to be very interesting. So I'll let you know the configurations as we go through. That's what we're going to be testing. It's going to be a lot of hitting. I'm going to try and get 10 good shots with each. And I'll obviously touch on, strike patterns, misses. We'll look at the numbers at the end, all that kind of thing. Let's do it. Right, so first up is just the normal stock configuration. So in the LTDX, it's a 10 gram and a 3 gram weight in their head. And it's just a normal grip, no added weight or anything. Obviously shafts staying the same. So with it being 6 configurations, I'm probably only going to show you 2 with each because otherwise it's going to be a mentally long video. It's already going to be quite long. So I'll show you 2 with each and then, as always, I might discuss as we go through, I don't know, what I'm feeling and what I'm seeing, but then we'll dive in and we'll talk about all the data at the end, and then I'll sum up as well right at the end, just tell you what the findings are really. It's a pretty good start. It's a little bit off the bottom, but I wouldn't be massively upset with that. Oh, look at that. Found the tiniest bit of fairway going. Yeah. Wouldn't be too upset with that. A little bit of a miss hit. Nice. 0 side spin on that one. It's not bad. I mean, so this swing weight, D1, very familiar with this kind of setup, I guess, with it not being anything out of the ordinary. D1 to D2, kind of D3 tops, kind of my swing weight regions. This feels very, very comfortable for me. The stroke felt pretty good. Yeah, love that. Love that one. Yep. Good numbers. 12 launch, 22 backspin, 144 efficiency. Liking that. Feels, yeah, really good. Right, so that's 10 done with D1, the standard stock setup. And I would say strike pattern, happy with the strike pattern. Decent, 7 out of 10. Dispersion, out of the 10 shots, 6 of them were less than 11 yards offline, and the rest were within 30 yards offline. So I really can't grumble about that. So yeah, overall very happy with that, and we'll look at the numbers at the end. Now I'm jumping up into the big boy, the 340 gram. It's obviously going to be very interesting. We're jumping from D1 to D0 in swing weight, so a very minor change in swing weight, if anything slightly lighter, but we're jumping up massively in overall weight to 340 grams. So I mean, when you pick it up, it does the whole thing. I mean, you can feel the more weight here, you can feel the more weight there. Like it just, yeah, it actually makes it feel stiffer, which is unusual. Didn't expect that, but yeah, it feels like a lot more effort to swing. So this is going to be really interesting. Oh wow, that was hard work, but what a shot. I mean, it's in the bunker, but well, what's that, 4 yards offline at like 330? Exactly that. Huh. I mean, that was effort, but I'm not going to grumble at that. It's also going to be really interesting to see if there's any differences in dynamic delivery. So does it change like my angle of attack? Does it change like my path? Does it change like consistently the face relationship to the path? Anything like that. It's going to be super interesting. And then obviously swing speed's going to be also very interesting. That's really interesting. Again, that swing actually felt pretty good. Wow, that is a miss. Wow, that is a miss. It's just toey. Yeah. Yep. Okay, so we got, yeah, hung the face open, toe strike, probably geared it open from that strike and just see you later. She felt pretty good. It's long. Yeah. Interesting. Wow, that feels different. Okay, so that was 10 done with the heaviest combo. So the D0 swing weight, but 340 grams. So really, really heavy overall. I'm not sure if I mentioned how we got to that overall weight, but essentially, like I said, there's a 10 and a 3 gram weight in this head. So all I did, I swapped the 3 gram out for another 10 gram weight. So added 7 grams of mass into the head, and then put a 20 gram weight in the end of the grip as well. So added basically as much mass both ends as I possibly could. And from a results perspective, I'd say the strike pattern was similar, not quite as good, but the results and the dispersion were way more erratic. Like I had one basically hook, one massive right, kind of a few down the left, a few down the right, and a few that were okay as well. So yeah, it was definitely just nowhere near as consistent or controllable as the stock weight and swing weight. So now we're jumping right down from the heaviest into the very lightest. So head weights, we've got 2 3 gram head weights in there now. So 2 of the lightest head weights possible. And I've taken the 20 gram completely out. So we're down at about 305, 306 grams. So much lighter, but swing weight we're at C6, like just a smidge over C6. So actually from a swing weight perspective, it's, you know, about 4 points, which is substantial, but considering the mass difference is not that crazy. So it's going to be really interesting diving into this now. Considering what I was just swinging, this feels like there's nothing there, to be honest, which, again, generally extremes are not ideal. Actually, the strike felt okay. Obviously a bit of a high cutty one. Felt weak, felt like I delivered a lot of loft. Yeah, launch and spin came up. Obviously it was a bit of a cutty one, but strike was really good. Yeah, hit up and quite a bit of loft. See that spin come up and a loss of distance, but can't wait to see his numbers at the end. Weirdly, I do actually think I prefer the way this feels than the last one. I think too heavy for me is not ideal, but again, it felt pretty decent. Take that one. Yep. Solid, good numbers. Yep. Right, so 30 shots down. So that was 10 shots hit with the lightest combo. And yeah, going straight from the heaviest to that, I definitely preferred it. Again, it was a little extreme, like definitely a little light, but I definitely preferred it. I reckon the strike pattern was better. Interestingly, from the heavier weight, the strike pattern was consistently slightly more toe side. And then with that, the strike moved a little bit more heel side. So we're definitely seeing some strike variations within the overall weight and swing weight changes there. But for me personally, the strike pattern was a bit better. The miss was a bit better. The dispersion up on the map actually looks fairly similar, but I feel it was more consistent, or the miss was better with that weight for me, and it felt a bit better. That's how I would describe it, but still the D1 standard weight setup is clearly winning. So now we're jumping into a bit more of a normal setup again. We've not got any weight in the grip, and I've put 2 10-gram weights in the head. So we're at, I think it's 320 in terms of the overall weight. This is the heaviest swing weight, because obviously I've just added all the mass here. We haven't got anything down here. It's the heaviest swing weight, D5.5, but the overall weight is kind of right in the middle. So instantly for me, picking this up, it feels so much heavier than the 340 gram setup. So even though it's 20 grams lighter, it feels a lot heavier. And that generally, I mean, if you add mass to the head, you are going to make the club just feel much heavier, because that's where the majority of people is going to feel the weight. Most people, some people are different, but in the head, so as soon as I pick that up, it just feels like a sledgehammer to me, which is not good. And that is what it felt like. Strike felt good. It's definitely an interesting theme that the heavier the weight, whether it's overall or swing weight, that right miss comes in. And again, there are definitely patterns within this. I'm going to touch on it a bit more in the summary, but not everyone is the same. People will react differently, so you can't necessarily take my results from this and apply it to yourself. You might be different, but typically speaking, if there was a pattern, heavier swing weight, heavier overall weight would make a lot of people leak it more right. And then lighter head weight, lighter overall weight is easier to get it turning as a definite pattern, and that's certainly what I'm seeing. Felt like a really good swing. I'm still seeing that kind of high right leaker. I mean, it's not bad. You'd be okay with that on most normal holes. I mean, that's just going to be a horrendous second shot, isn't it? But how far offline is that? 26. Oh, that's borderline. But yeah, straight away, I mean, that was the third shot I've hit with this combo. Second one was fairly similar to the first, maybe a little bit better. And then that one still seeing that leak, and the strike pattern move central but low, which is again not uncommon for more head weight, but some definite patterns emerging. Right, so from the very heaviest swing weight, which was the last one I just showed you, D5.5, to touch briefly on that, the strike pattern was the best with that, like without question. But again, from a control perspective, it was probably just a little bit too much, but the strike was great. And I hit some of the best shots I've hit all day with that setup, to be fair. I felt like the miss was just a little bit worse. So for me now, from a fitting perspective, I would probably start to work back from that swing weight down towards D1 and really try and kind of fine tune it in that sort of area, because strike pattern was great with that. The miss was just not quite as good. So now we're going from the very heaviest swing weight to the very lightest swing weight. So this is down at about C1, and we've kind of gotten to that by the lightest head weights. So now we've got 2 of the 3 gram head weights in. So the lightest head weight, and I've got the big 20 gram plug in the end of the grip. So we've taken basically as much weight out from here as we can. We've added it all up here. So really drag that balance point up. So from a weight perspective, it's definitely not the lightest at all. Again, it's kind of in between, but from a swing weight perspective, it's really, really, really light. Actually felt really good. That's long. 310 carry, bounce the bunker. That actually felt quality. Great numbers as well. 143 efficiency. I think that's probably the quickest ball speed I've seen all day, at rounding up to 169. 14.4 launch, 2100 backspin, just under. This is the funny thing with it though, and this is why I say to everyone, like, theory means absolutely jack, like nothing. You would always say that in theory, you've taken all the weight out of the head, and if anything, you know, we've moved it down there, so there's no weight in the head, and it's a super light swing weight. So with a lighter head, you're going to get less ball speed, or less. It's going to be less efficient because there's less mass to hit the ball with. Well, it's just the quickest ball speed I've seen all day with the lightest head and lightest overall swing weight. Makes sense. Oh wow, that was horrendous. That was just a bad swing though, but look at that for a result. Basically the same as the first one. I just nearly missed it, but yeah, high toe. But that just felt like a very bad swing, to be fair. Don't really think I can attribute that too much to the club. So I've just had one of the later ones in with this, the lightest swing weight one, because the first one was unbelievable. The rest have been not very good. That's been, yeah, it's been a couple of those. Oh, nice kick. Not good. So I think, as you could probably gather from that last one, that was horrendous. Like, that was by far the worst. Could I attribute it to me getting a bit tired? Possibly, but just so uncontrollable. Strike was everywhere. I hit some over there like that one, some over there. Even when I made a pretty good swing, it was generally a bigger miss than I thought it was going to be. Apart from the first one, which just felt like a great swing. You can put a great swing on any club and get a good result, but for the most part, that was bad. That was bad. Right, so last combo. And it's not, like, it is different from the last, but we've still got the 20 gram plug in the end, but now we're back to stock weight setup in the head. So 10 gram and a 3 gram up in that weight by about 7 grams. So we're up to, from C1, we're at about C5 now. So it's going back towards the right direction, but still a little bit light, but at least we're back at stock head weight. So we've got a normal amount of weight in the head. Now this is going to be quite an interesting one for me, because we had another setup that was a very similar swing weight, but in a different weight configuration. So that's going to be interesting to see. And another thing is that a lot of people will generally do this. So for example, if we were simulating the fact that we had a stock head and someone had just put a heavier grip on, so we've added, say, a grip that weighs 20 grams more, a lot of people will then think that they're going to need to add that mass back into the head. Whereas I don't think that for most people. Some people, yes, but for most people, I don't personally think that, because it's not like we're subtracting mass from here. We've still got the same amount of mass here. And if we do kind of add mass here and mass here, like we saw with the kind of really heavy one for me, again, you just can't lose control. So be cautious with that. If you are adding a bigger grip, don't necessarily just go and chuck loads of head weight in, because that could also be bad. It does need a little bit more fine tuning and testing. And yeah, straight away you can obviously feel that weight back in the head there, which is quite nice, I'd say, from that feel perspective. Yeah, and that felt like I actually lost my balance a little bit, which is unusual for me. But again, I mean, that felt different. Like the whole club just felt different. Far more solid. And yeah, good numbers. And the ball speed was down a touch because I hit it a little bit high heel, which is a bad place to hit it, but 14.4 launch, 21 backspin, 300 carry, nice ball flight. Again, that strike was not there, but I definitely felt like I knew where the club was more. It still felt like a better swing at it. A little bit high toe, yeah, high toe. So yeah, backspin drop quite a bit, but the delivery was really good. Therefore, we got a really good result. Not going to grumble at that. Yeah, I mean, it's night and day different. Again, I turned that one a little bit, which would be a bit more of a typical shot for me, but the strike was good. Launch conditions were good. We see the club speed and ball speed up, 168, 118. It's just so different from that last setup. Right, so I'm just going to put the pressure on myself now. I want to show you one more of this, the final setup. So this is my last shot, shot 60. And then I want to show you the dispersion of this setup quickly. I think I've got the heating on a bit too high in here. Right. Ah, yes. That felt very good. Like that bunker today, but to be fair, it's on a pretty good line, so we'll take it. Again, I mean, so the strike pattern's been really good. I mean, you see one there that strayed a little bit high, but the rest are really good. So I'm just going to bring up the dispersion map on here quickly. So I'm pretty sure you can see this okay. I mean, obviously I hit 10 shots. I mean, this little cluster there, that's 4 shots right on top of each other. So there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Comfortably in the fairway there. Got one that leaked left, which I think I showed you, which is a little bit of a turn, but still more than safe, absolutely fine. All those are absolutely spot on. There was one that I pushed, to be fair, which felt like an okay swing, but it was just a bit of a push, right? But it's maybe okay, it's borderline, depending on what hole you're playing. But all of those, I mean, considering I thought I was just getting tired with the last combo, which I could not hit to save my life, and all I did, it's basically the same setup, but I just went back to a head weight setup. So I added 7 grams back into the head, which is quite substantial when we're talking about head weight, obviously, but the difference was just mental. Right, okay, so that was very interesting. I almost wish I could show you all the shots there as I went through, but that would be a really long video then, and it's already going to be too long. So, as always, before we jump into the summary and I kind of talk about patterns and what I might see in fittings, just going to touch on the data. I'm going to be doing this a little bit more TXG style because I want to flick in and out of things and kind of show you different things on the screen. So as I talk, I'm going to be showing you the screenshot. Just kind of try and follow the cursor. It's going to be a lot to go through, so all you nerds are probably going to love it. So first up, we bring up the ball page, the ball data page, which is obviously the ball speed, launch, spin, etc. I mean, we'll touch briefly on those kind of variables. It's not really so much what this test's about. Ball speed, there was not enough in it really for me to say that there was any difference. To be honest, I did not see any difference. On average, we see a little bit more at the D5.5 because I feel like I just struck that more consistently. And the lowest, actually, interestingly, was the standard sock setup at D1. Again, it's a mile an hour in it. It's nothing really. And interestingly, the highest ball speed of the day did come from the lightest overall combo with the lightest swing weight, which again goes against everything you've probably been told and all of the theory saying a light head creates less ball speed. That's not something I've ever seen personally. Definitely can lead to a lack of control, which I did see in that, but it did lead to the highest ball speed. So not on average because it was not consistent, but it was the highest ball speed of the day, but not enough in there for me to really look at that too much. Launch and spin, I like most of them, to be honest. I like a lot of those launch conditions. I mean, the C1, which is the lightest combo, again, it launched a bit too high for my liking, up at 15, and the heaviest combo spun a bit too low for me, at just under 19. So those two were not great, but everything else is you know, right around that 13, 14 launch mark, 2,000 to 2,200 spin in a really nice window, to be honest. So don't hate any of those at all. So as we can see, the extremes are kind of phasing out slowly, and we'll touch on the dispersion in a minute, which is obviously one of the biggest parts of this. Distance, nothing in it really. I mean, you can see that the C1, the lightest combo there, down at 295, so it's the least consistent, so I had the least average carry, but everything else, 299, 300, 299, 302, 302, absolutely nothing in it really. From a consistency perspective, it's really quite interesting to see that the 340 gram was the most consistent on spin. So it was the worst spin rate, but it was the most consistently worst. It's good. At 1878, but 260 standard deviation, so pretty consistent. Whereas the worst was the C1, which is not a surprise. That was not consistent at all, but the rest are pretty okay. You know, 300, 398, 412, 400. That's not a bad range to be in, to be honest. But the best I would discount straight away. Second best, what are we looking at? 308, which was the D1 standard setup, which again I felt pretty good with, so that makes perfect sense. From a carry perspective, I mean 7788. I mean, there's not really much in it, to be honest. So before I keep waffling on, let's touch on the dispersion, which is the big part of this. So at the top right there, you'll obviously see the dispersion patterns. Quite hard to see, but I'm going to start ciphering them down for you. So we can see that the biggest one there is 340 gram, that orange circle, so the orange dot. So we can take that one out straight away. And as we do, it narrows down, but there's another one that stands out straight away, which is the lightest, the C1. Again, so we can see straight away there, both ends of the spectrum, the extremes, worst dispersion. So again, there's definitely a pattern in club and club fitting, right? Extremes are bad. Also probably a little bit of common sense. But so we can take that one out as well. Now we start to get into a decent range, to be fair, much better. You can still see that green circle though standing out, the D5.5, which most head weight. So you can see on there, there's a few more that leaked right, which again, I did see as a pattern. More head weight, more overall weight, tended to want to leak more right, which is a general overall pattern, I would say, for most people. So we can take that one out. So now we're down to actually three pretty decent kind of dispersions. So for me, again, I touched on at the end with the last combo, 333 gram C5 swing weight. For me, I felt that was the best. Because again, on this, you can have 8 within that, and then you can have one here, and it draws that kind of pattern. So for me, there was one a little bit left and one a little bit right with the C5 333 gram, but the rest were just like dead straight. And I mean, there's a bit of a pattern there in terms of the D1 standard setup, 313 grams, and the C5, 333 grams, both stock head weights. So the only difference between them is the C5, I put the 20 gram weight in the grip. So still stock head weight. And between that, I couldn't really feel that much difference, to be honest. Like I touched on, if you've got a stock head weight and you're just adding weight into the handle, yeah, the swing weight does drop substantially, but depending on how you feel it, the head weight is still the same. Right, so the swing weight is lighter, but you've still got the same weight down there. So for me, it actually didn't feel that different, which I think is why it was probably, they were both pretty decent. To be honest, I reckon I could probably game either. And then again, the lighter weight C6 in there as well, from a dispersion perspective, arguably was the best front to back. Yeah, which again, for me, I've always felt that slightly lighter is slightly better, to be honest, from a dispersion perspective. And that's what we've seen definitely from this test. So I'll definitely be going standard head weight, like quite comfortably. I think for me, that's obvious, like absolutely no questions about that. That was better for me. So if we click onto the club data page, I mean, let's see between those three. I mean, the strikes were all pretty consistent, to be honest. Slightly more heel side with the 333 C5, but I'll take any of those any day of the week. Efficiency out of those three was the best with the D1, which I like. Swing speed, we definitely can see as we got lighter overall, and so swing weights were the same out of those two bottom ones there, C5 and C6, but you can definitely see a pickup in club speed from the lighter overall weight, which again makes perfect sense, but that's only 1 mile an hour. Again, I mean, these kind of things, a lot of people think that there's going to be a huge difference in these things. Let's go lighter shaft, more swing speed. So marginal. Let's go lighter weight, light swing weight, more swing speed. So marginal. Like, it's not as much in it as you would probably think from a speed perspective or a ball speed perspective. There's just not. And I'll add all the other ones back in a minute. Dynamic loft, pretty similar, 1 degree less with the D1. Again, I don't really feel that was anything within the club that was making me do that. I think that was more me, to be brutally honest. Let's add the rest back in quick, because I want to see from a delivery perspective, a path, face, angle of attack. Yeah, nothing is there. So that path column over on the far right, or 1 in from the far right, 2, 1, 2, 8, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 5. I mean, there was literally like, that's pretty much the same. Like there's nothing in that at all. He was pretty tight within the face angle actually as well, 1.4 with the D1, but the rest 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 6, 2. I mean, that's consistent. Dynamic lie, again, I wouldn't expect that to change. We're using the same shaft, same head, etc. And then angle of attack, 7, 7, 3, 8, 8, 8, 4, 8, 6. So I did get a little bit more up with the lightest weight. That tended to be maybe a little bit of a pattern that I saw, a little bit more up with the lightweight. But again, they're all 7 to 8, 4. There's not much in it. But yeah, a little bit more up with the lighter weight. Swing weight, club speed, definitely a pattern that the lighter the swing weight, the faster we swing it, as we kind of thought. But it's a mile an hour, realistically, isn't it? Which is just not much in it at all. So from a club delivery perspective, the main things that I wanted to see was, I think the heavier weight got more toe side strike pattern, definitely got less consistent. But from an actual delivery perspective, it didn't change much for me. Maybe got a little bit more up on angle of attack with the lighter weight, but apart from that, path and face was very consistent. Dynamic lie, dynamic loft for the most part, 17.4, 17.4, 17.6, 17.2, a little bit less with the first couple. Again, was that me reacting to the setup? Possibly. Also feel possibly I was changing a little bit as I went through. It's almost impossible to stay the same for like 60 shots or bang on anyway. But yeah, apart from that, I mean, we see the efficiency was the best with D5.5, hence why the ball speed was higher. And the strike was just more consistent. But yeah, I mean, that's a lot of data to go through. So hopefully I didn't confuse too many of you. And if you've got any questions down below, let me know, I'll get back to you. But let's have a quick sum up. Right, so here we go, another very, very interesting test. So to kind of sum up, we'll touch on a few things, a few patterns that generally would stand out, I think, for most people, and kind of did for me. I would say heavier swing weight, especially when you're adding more head weight. That, for most people, could encourage that little bit of that right miss, just getting late with it, not being able to square it up, all those kind of things, which is definitely something that I saw. So if you've got a right miss, maybe steer clear of whacking loads of head weight in, especially if you're doing it because you think it's going to add ball speed. It's probably not. And then the opposite end of the spectrum, when it obviously gets very light, it's generally quite easy to turn over. So even if you're not playing head weight, playing around with the head weight, you know, a lot of people will cut it down very, very short, which again, when you go too extreme with that, makes a very light swing weight uncontrollable. So bear in mind that as well. And extremes generally are bad. Just steer away from extremes. Too heavy, too light. For 99% of people, that is not going to be good for your golf. Hence why kind of a lot of the stock stuff is within that kind of bell curve, that range that suits a lot of people well. So for me, yeah, I mean, definitely stock head weight. I think I wouldn't play around with head weight, to be honest. I mean, when I added that head weight in up to D5.5, the strike was pretty consistent, but it was just a bit too uncontrollable. I mean, I could dabble a little bit in between that D1 and that D5 range, maybe D2, D3. Like D2 is pretty nice for me. D3 I think would be okay as well. Get in slightly less controllable, but it would be in that range, I would say. It was definitely interesting, the dispersion, when I added that 20 gram weight into the end. I think maybe there's more videos to come on that. That could be a very interesting subject to touch on, whether it made me feel like I could release it a little bit more with it being a little bit more higher balance, but still with the kind of same head weight, possibly. I mean, the delivery variables were pretty similar, but I mean, it was just super straight, super straight. So yeah, I mean, that's really interesting test. And again, I just want to reiterate, don't kind of take this as gospel. Same as with anything in fitting or coaching. If you're watching coaching videos, it's the same thing. You can't apply all of that to yourself really without knowing your traits, your swing traits, how you react to things, how you react to weight. So it's a good, interesting test to see. And like I said, there's some patterns that for most people you will pick out, like I just mentioned. But ultimately, come and get fitted, come and test it for yourself, come and see what happens. It's got to be done. Yeah, that was a long video, I think. I've not edited it yet, but it's probably a long video. But I hope there was a lot of good information in there. As always, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something from it. Comment below any questions. Let me know your thoughts. And stay tuned. I'll see you in the next one.